I'd like to first thank you all for coming to my session today. I hope you're having a great conference. And my session is Intro to Panels, Customized Layouts for Everything. Hooray. Now, before we jump into panels, quick introduction, if I'm on the right brush. So I'm Jake Heineken. I'm the Digital Services Librarian at Madison Public Library in Madison, Wisconsin. And what that basically means I'm the web developer for the library. So I do site building, content management, theming, that kind of stuff. All right, so panels. For those of you who don't know, I guess let's do a little gauge. Who here has not used panels at all before? Okay. Who's used it a little bit? Who used it and hated it? No? Okay. All right, so panels is a module that allows you to create customized layouts for different uses on your site. And now I know that there are some complaints against it that people use, say it has a big learning curve. They say that it's overkill for things that other modules do much more simply. And some people just like using display suite and context, and that's great. I think it kind of demonstrates one of the best things and most frustrating things about Drupal is that you can do the same thing about 14 different ways. I like using panels, and I hope that this presentation will give you, show those of you who are new to panels that implementing it on your site might be a little easier and it might be more useful than you think. So I'm going to go through some specific examples of things that panels can do, but they're things that I think that are pretty scalable, and you could template them on your site for your uses. So for this example, I started with a fresh install of Drupal 7. Panels is in development, is in the beta stage for Drupal 8, so there's a path forward. And I've just installed these custom modules, panels, chaos tools, and views. Chaos tools is the only actual requirement for panels to run. Same thing with views. Panels in place editor, page manager, and views content panes. Now, panels in place editor just gives us another UI to actually edit the panels that we have on our site. Page manager allows us to create new pages on the site that aren't nodes, and then also to take over the display of our default pages on our site. That's kind of hard to describe in one sentence, but we'll go into more detail when we get to the session. And then views content panes is just another views display that allows us a kind of special integration between views and panels. All right, so there's also another useful module that I won't have time to show you, but that's panel nodes. And that allows you to create individual nodes with their own customized layouts. And since they're nodes, that we can then use them in views, and then they show up in site search as well. But we're going to go ahead and jump in. I've created some filler content, just copied over some news content from my library's website, and created some views for us to populate our panels with. All right, so to go over the basics of panels, we're going to do something pretty simple. Just make a new home page. Now, we're going to go into Structure, and then click on Panels. And then this is kind of the panels dashboard. On the left side, we've got things that we can create, panel pages, custom layouts. If we had panel nodes enabled, we could add new nodes right here. On the right side, we've got this page wizard, which will go kind of a streamlined way to creating a panel page. We're going to go through all the settings so you can see them. This is the page manager module. One of the places that it shows up is here. We'll go into more details later. And then any custom layouts that we've created show down here. So to create a new page, we're going to go into Panel Page, and we're going to give this, since this is our home page, we'll just call it Home. We'll just say it's our custom home page, and we've got to give it a path, so let's just call it Home. We can check this box right here to make this site our home page, and all this does is just change the default front page URL in our site information. That's all it does. And so it changes it to the path that we have right here. We're going to leave all the other settings as default because we're just going to make a simple front page. We're going to click Continue. And now we can choose the layout of our page. We can start with this flexible builder, which allows you to create the layout kind of on the fly. Or you can choose from a number of kind of a one-column layout, a number of two-column layouts, and a number of three-column layouts. I think for our example, we're going to go with a two-column layout, a two-column stacked, which just has a top region, two side regions, and then a bottom region. So I'm going to click Continue. And then now we get a bunch of kind of display options for the panel. And so we start out with this. We can click to disable the Drupal blocks and regions. And what this means is normally, if we have this unchecked, your panel will just be placed in the content region of your theme. What this does, and it works with a bunch of the kind of base themes. Some themes aren't supported in this, but it kind of strips out the other regions, other content regions on your page and just leaves you with your header, your panel, and then your footer region. You can add CSS body classes and remove them. We can give the page a CSS ID and even add some simple CSS code that just works for this page. And as this description says, only put minor adjustments in here. If you're going to do anything major, you should put it in your theme. And then there's also this renderer option, where since we installed In-Place Editor, we can choose a different way to interact and edit the panel. We're going to leave it at default, just so I can show you what it looks like without it for now. We'll leave everything else as default and click Continue. And then now, it's a little washed out, but you can see the different regions that we have. Oh, it's very washed out. Can't see it at all. So there is a tiny gear on the top left of each of these regions, which we can't see at all because of the coloring, but it's right there. There we go. And we can click on Add Content. And then now we get to kind of all of the different categories of what in panels calls panes. And a pane is just like a component or a block, basically, that we can add to the pages on our site, or the regions in our panel. And so there are a number of options. We've got activity, menus. You can add any of the menus. Any of your miscellaneous blocks that you've created show up here in this category. Page elements like help, actions, page title. Views panes. This is where the views panes displays of the special views content panes type that I said we installed at the beginning show up here. You can also add any other views. So if we clicked on, this is a fresh install, so we've only got one view enabled, but all of your views would show up here, and you can add them as panes. There are other widgets like, the search form and the user login, and you can add existing nodes as panes on the page. Then there's also this new custom content, which just gives you a HTML text box. And if you have WYSIWYG installed, it's just a WYSIWYG editor, where you can, add whatever kind of HTML content you want on your page. I've created some page views, or some sample views that we can use. So we've got this highlighted article pane. Click Finish. And now you can see it a little better. We've got this, and then we're going to add some content to our other columns. So we've got another views pane. We've got this recent community articles pane. And then we'll add, there we go. We can add just a regular views block. So I can show you the difference between a views block and a views pane in the interface. So we can click on articles, and then we can choose which display that we wanted. We've got our block, click continue, and then now we get a bunch of options to kind of override the settings on our view. Now this doesn't change the settings in the view itself. And so anywhere else that view is displayed on your site will show up in the normal settings. But we can override the title just on this panel. We can change the more link, give it a custom pager, things like that. We're going to leave this as default and click Finish. And then all we have to do is click Finish. And then, very important, update and save. All right, and so let's go home and see what we just made. So the normal Drupal homepage just has a list of teasers that have promoted to front. And so now we've got our highlighted article and then 2 views that we put in. Now let's make this look a little more like a homepage by maybe getting rid of the sidebar, removing the title, and adding some borders around these, little spacing around the views on the bottom. So to edit this panel, we can either go back in through structure and go to panels again, or we can just hover over the top right and click on the gear. And so we can edit our panel. And what we want to do is we want to get rid of that sidebar. So we'll go back into the general settings. We're going to click this disable Drupal blocks and regions to get rid of everything except for just our panel that we're adding. We'll check the in-place editor so I can show you what that looks like. And we'll click update. Go back into the content. And we want to get rid of the page title because we don't have a home on our home page. So we've got this title type. We're going to set it to no title. And you notice if we have it manually set, you can actually just overwrite it right here. But we're going to set it to no title. And then I thought maybe a border around those bottom views would be nice. So each of our panes that we've added have this gear in the top right that allows us to edit it. And so we get the settings that we had when we added it. We've got CSS properties where we can add classes and IDs. We got style options, visibility options, locking, caching. And this is where we remove panes that we don't want, no longer want on our panel. But I've put in just a tiny bit of custom code into my theme to say whenever I add a rounded border class to anything, it'll give it just a 1 pixel border with rounded edges. So we're going to click Save. And let's add that same border to this one. So CSS properties, give it the rounded border class. And we'll click Update and Save. And let's go back to our home page and see what changed. All right, and this looks interesting, giant screen. So I'll zoom out a little bit. So we've got our featured article with the image all the way across the screen. We've got, and you can't see the borders at all, but there are borders around these now. And so we've got our views, and at the bottom of the page, we've also got the new in-place editor buttons. And so there are a couple of options. We've got customize this page and change layout. And if we click on change layout, it allows us to do just that. We can change the layout of the site, or of the front page. So let's say instead of a 2-column layout, we actually wanted a 3-column layout. So we'll go to 3 columns, and maybe we'll do this 25, 50, 25. And now we get an option we have to move the panes from our previous regions into our new region, our new regions in our layout. And so panels tries to guess. So like it put all of the left side panes in the left side region and on the right side in the right side, but it wasn't sure what to do with the top. So we've just got to move that to the middle region and click Save. And then now we've completely changed the layout of our front page, just right there. And this looks interesting, so let's go ahead and change it right back. And this time, panels guessed right. It knows what we want it to do. We'll click Save again, and we're back to what we had before, just like that. Now, if you click Customize, you get pretty much the same options that you had, or nearly all of the same options that you had in the standard panels layout. We can add new panes to our different regions, and it's, like I said, it's washed out, but it's more delineated which regions you're actually in. We can edit the settings of our panes, edit the style, CSS, and remove them from our regions. Also, we can drag and drop them between regions. And we can do that in the standard interface as well. I'll show you what that looks like in a little bit. But so if we actually wanted this one over here, and this one over here, we just do that and click Save, and there we have it. And so what's really cool about this in-place editor is that it actually it has a different, it uses different permissions for editing it. And so what that means is that we can have it so that certain roles on our site have the ability to edit panels only the panels that we've set as with the in-place editor. And excuse me for a second. Okay. So we can give roles on our site to edit only the panels that have in-place editor enabled. And here's where the views content panes display, views display comes in and is very useful. Is that if we click on customize again, and click on the settings for our block that we made, or well, that I made earlier, we get that whole list of options that we can choose from. And now, depending on who your site editors are, this could be very confusing, or maybe you just don't want them to be able to change anything or break anything that you don't want them to. And this is where Views Panes comes in. If we click on the settings for the Views pane, it's completely blank right now. And that's because as an admin, as a site builder, in our views settings, we can choose which settings that the user can override from the panels, from the in-place panels editor. And so if we go into our views, so we got our views, we got this one article view, and if we go into the Community Articles pane, in the pane settings, there's this Allow Settings option. And now we've got a number of options that we can choose to enable on the in-place editor. And so we've got, like, we can edit the pager or change the pager offset, edit or remove, add or remove a more link, override the title, even override fields in the view. And so let's go ahead and check that one. Check title override and more link. We'll just click apply and then save. And now if we go back to our front page and click on the settings, we now have those three settings that we just enabled. And so we could override the title. We could call this, we could just call this recent community articles or recent community. We could remove the more link. We can, maybe we decided that we didn't actually like the images in this view for this instance. So we can just uncheck it. If we click finish, you can see it's completely changed what the view looks like just on the home page. And if we click save, we've completely changed the title, we've cut out the images, and we've removed the more link. And we've done this right from the panels page. We never had to go into a view settings. We don't even have to have permissions to edit the view. We can do it all right here from the panels page. And so this means that as an admin, we can allow our site editors to kind of edit things that we want them to, and just the things that we want them to. And there's also in the panels settings, by default, you can, this says make all views available as panes. We can uncheck this so that our site editors can only add the content panes that we've created, so that they don't have to worry about any of the other views that we've added on the site. We can just give them the power to edit the things that we want them to. Okay. So, we've gone over the basics and looked at the in-place editor. Let's do something a little more complicated, but I think very useful and very scalable. So I mentioned this earlier, but the Page Manager module we installed allows us to not just create new pages, but override the way default pages on the site display. And now we could, of course, do this using a TPL file. But if you're not as experienced with PHP, or you just really want a graphical interface, this can be really useful. So if we go into Structure and then Panels, you can see we've got this table of all of the available pages on our site. You can see we've also got our new page, our home page. And so we've got this table right here, but if we go to Structure and then Pages, we get that same table but with a lot more details. And so we've got the machine name, the title, the path that it follows, and then what kind of type it is, if it's custom or a system page. And doesn't know that you can read it on here, but there are options like this is the user view page, the user edit page, the node view, and the node edit. And so we can completely take over the templates for nodes when they're displayed, or when they're edited, which is pretty cool. And so we're going to enable the node template, and you can see it's no longer grayed out, and we can click edit. We'll need to add a new variant to this, and we'll have to give this a title. Let's go ahead and call this article anonymous view. And then, unlike the homepage, where we left all the settings at default, we're going to check selection rules. And that's because we're going to create a node template that only shows up when an article is viewed by an anonymous user. And so we're going to click Create Variant. Now we get to our selection rules page where we can choose the criteria that'll be chosen for this variant. In this drop-down menu, we've got a whole bunch of options. We've got what the current theme is, if it's on the front page, custom PHP code that you enter, strings in the URL path, the user role, the node type. Even if there's data in a particular field, we can create a new variant for it. So if you had an article with this taxonomy term, you can create a layout for that. And if you had an article with a different taxonomy term, it could use a completely different layout. But we want anonymous users looking at articles. So we're going to check node type, click Add, and then check Article. Save. And then we're going to add a user role, and we want anonymous user. So we'll click Save. And we want all criteria to pass, so we'll click Continue. Now we can choose our builder. So let's go ahead and use this flexible builder so we can create this layout on the fly. This will be interesting with the washdown pages. We'll click Continue. We've got all of our display options again. Let's go ahead and disable the blocks and regions right away. Leave everything else at default. And now this looks a lot similar to our front page, but since we chose the flexible builder layout, we now have two more options. We've got Show Layout Designer and Reuse Layout. So if we click on Show Layout Designer, oh good, we can see that we've got, by default, the flexible builder comes with one region called center, in one row, in one column. You kind of follow this nested borders. And now, I think I'm going to make a pretty simple layout, just a 2/3, 1/3 layout. And so we're just going to add a region to the right of the center region. So if we click on the row that we want to add the region to, and then add region to right, we'll give this a title. We'll just call it right. We can give it a class if we want. We can choose if this is going to be a fluid width, or if it's just a fixed where we set it. And then we can decide to hide the element if it's empty. So we can hide the region if there's nothing in it. So we're going to click Save. And then, oh, you can't see it, but there is a slider now that allows us to choose actually how big this region is. And so we wanted a 2/3, 1/3. So it's about there. And we can change the name of this to better reflect what we want, maybe main content, and we'll click Save. And then now, if you wanted, we could make this as complex and as detailed as as you can imagine. We can add as many rows as we want, as many regions to those rows as we want, and even add more columns. So you could have like an inset sidebar, and then the rest of your page, and then with tons of rows and tons of regions inside of those. But I'm pretty set with this. So I'm going to click Hide Layout Designer, and then we can actually decide to reuse this layout if we want, if we like this layout and want to use it on other pages. And then it will show up in our panels dashboard if I clicked right here. But we're going to go ahead and add our content to this. So I'm going to click Add Content. And then now, since this is a node variant panel that we're creating, there are a bunch more categories that are available. So we've got comment, form, node, and node tokens. And what we want for this page, most of them are going to be in the node category. And you can see there are a bunch of, all of the fields that we have attached to the node are available here, and then a bunch of other stuff as well that's just kind of attached to the node by default in Drupal. Like the comment form, attached files, the author, the title, those kind of things. So we're going to go ahead and add the image field. We're just gonna, the only thing we're going to do is remove the label so it doesn't say image above it. We're going to click Continue. And we can choose our image style. So let's go ahead and just choose it to large and leave it at nothing. So we'll finish. And we'll add the a bunch of other stuff as well. So we'll add our node body. get rid of the label again, leave the default formatter, because this is the full article view, so we don't want it trimmed. We'll click continue, finish. We'll want to add our comments to this page. And if you go under comment, there's just the comment reply form. But if we go under node, we can add all of the comments that are associated with it. And we want it threaded, pager's good. And let's go ahead and add our comment form. And here we can choose to show links to register and log in if they're an anonymous user. So in this, since this is for anonymous users, that's what we want. So we'll click here, click finish. And then let's go ahead and add a view to the right region that we added. So I've got a views pane, and I've got this summaries and comment count, just so when people on our site are done reading the article, they can look at other articles. So what to do is click create variant, and then update and save. All right. And let's go look at our new page. So if we go back to our home page, now as an admin user, when I click on this, I'm just going to get the default layout because we set it only for anonymous users. But if I look at this as an anonymous user, so I'm back when we hadn't created anything, let's reload the page. This is an anonymous user. And then when I click on the article, I've now got a completely different layout for the anonymous user. So we've got our image title, or our image, our title, our view on the side, our body, we've got our, I don't have any comments on here, but any comments would show up, and our login and register if we want it. And so that is pretty much all that I've got to show you. So you can see, we've got a completely different layout based on the article type and who the user is. But if you think back to the selection criteria, we could choose and create a different layout for just about anything, based on data in the field, based on where it is on the site, based on the URL path in the string. And let's see, I think that is just about that. Wanted to remind you about the sprint tomorrow. Everyone's welcome. And then if you have feedback for my talk, you can go here to my joined in page. And I think we have just a couple minutes for questions. But there's nothing after this session until, is it 2:30? Is that right? So if you had more questions, we could say if you wanted. Sure.
How does that work with mobile? If somebody comes to the site with a mobile device?
So, depending on your theme and depending on the panels that you have, there are a couple responsive panels, extra add-on modules. I personally use Adaptive Theme for my pages, and they work really well with panels. And so you can set how your default panel pages or layouts change when you go down to different breakpoints. So that's what I use, is Adaptive Theme.
Do you do those settings in panels, or do you do the settings?
So you do those settings in Adaptive Theme, in your kind of theme settings. And then Adaptive Theme, when you kind of install it, it gives you a bunch of different standard layouts that you can choose, and they follow the rules that you've put in your theme settings. So.
I've heard that panels requires a much more substantial memory component. Can you speak to the necessary changes in PHP memory limits?
I cannot actually. I've never experienced any trouble. And I do know, I've seen other presentations where they've said that panels does, it does have a larger footprint. But I haven't really seen anything that really any changed any way that I built the site before. So, yeah.
Great.
Any other questions? All right. Thanks for coming.
I'm Tim Erickson.
Hi.
These are the Twin Cities. Have we met before now?
I don't think so.
Okay. Everybody did the Twin Cities Drupal camp?
Not yet. Last year it was during ALA, and so the American Library Association Conference. So I was going to go otherwise.
Okay. So you might consider this year if we're not competing?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to go. Yeah, as long as it's not.
You still
during
recording?
the annual conference. Oh yeah.